There's something wild about opening an old 1950s Betty Crocker cookbook, because the minute you flip those yellowed pages, you're basically time traveling. Suddenly you're standing in a post-war American kitchen, chrome appliances shining, Formica counters spotless, and dinner bubbling away in a world that felt safer, slower, and way more homemade than anything we know today. But here's the strange part. Some of the dinners that once ruled those kitchens, dishes every family relied on, have completely vanished. Not kind of forgotten. Gone. Wiped off modern dinner tables like they never existed. And that's what we're uncovering today. Before we dive in, hit that subscribe button and join our little community here at America's Lost Recipes, where we bring forgotten American food history back to life, one dish at a time. Because trust me, today's list isn't just nostalgia. It's a reminder of a whole era of cooking built on creativity, ration era habits, and the idea that meals weren't just food, they were rituals. They told stories. They held families together. In the 1950s, Betty Crocker was basically the queen of the American kitchen. If her book said, "Make this," millions did. Her recipes shaped weekday dinners, church potlucks, PTA nights, and Sunday spreads. But as tastes changed, fast food exploded, and quick meals replaced home cooking, many of these dishes faded away quietly without anyone even noticing. Some were wholesome. Some were strange. Some were surprisingly genius. And some, honestly, should have never disappeared. So today, we're opening that time capsule and pulling out 10 old Betty Crocker dinner recipes from the 1950s that nobody makes anymore. Each one has a story, a moment in history, and a flavor that deserves a comeback. Let's start with number 1. The forgotten tuna noodle casserole from the 1950s was once a dependable dinner that shaped everyday American life, and its quiet disappearance says more about the changing kitchen than most people realize. This simple dish was everywhere. Families prepared it on crowded weeknights, church groups served it at community gatherings, and school cafeterias relied on it to feed children affordably. Betty Crocker understood the needs of a post-war nation, and she introduced a recipe that matched the moment perfectly. The ingredients were modest but effective: tender egg noodles, canned tuna, soft peas, and a warm cream base that brought everything together. A crunchy topping created just enough texture to make the dish feel complete without adding cost. It was a meal that stretched a tight budget, filled the table, and offered a sense of stability during a decade when families were growing quickly and money often needed to be saved rather than spent. For many children of that era, the aroma of this casserole rising from a glass baking dish signaled comfort and routine. It represented a home that felt secure in a world that moved at a gentler pace. Betty Crocker promoted it because it delivered practicality at a time when practicality mattered more than culinary adventure. The decline of the casserole came quietly. As frozen dinners expanded, microwave ovens spread, and quick meals became the new standard, dishes that required patience lost their place. The tuna noodle casserole was not flashy or modern, and it slowly slipped away from the American table. Yet the story behind it deserves attention. This dish once supported families through long workdays, busy schedules, and limited budgets. It preserved a sense of togetherness that defined mid-century American kitchens. Remembering it helps us understand what the nation valued, and what it gradually left behind. Betty Crocker's classic meat potato hot dish from the 1950s was a staple that defined weeknight dinners, and its disappearance reflects a major shift in American cooking habits. This dish was simple, reliable, and filling. Families could transform inexpensive ground beef and potatoes into a complete meal that satisfied hunger, comforted the soul, and required minimal preparation. It appeared in kitchens across the nation, from small towns to bustling cities, yet few people today recognize its legacy. The recipe combined ground beef, diced potatoes, and a creamy sauce, often enriched with a touch of onions or canned vegetables. Everything baked together in a single dish until the flavors melded and the top turned golden. Its design was practical, affordable ingredients, easy cleanup, and consistent results. Betty Crocker promoted it as a solution for busy mothers who needed to feed hungry families without spending hours in the kitchen. For those who grew up with it, the aroma of the meat potato hot dish represented more than dinner. It signaled care, stability, and a predictable rhythm to daily life. Children and adults alike associated the bubbling casserole with the warmth of family evenings, the comfort of familiar tastes, and the reassurance that the next meal would be satisfying and complete. The decline of this dish coincided with the rise of convenience foods and frozen dinners. Its slow, deliberate preparation no longer fit the pace of modern households. As tastes shifted toward novelty and speed, a hot dish quietly disappeared from menus, home kitchens, and memory. Yet this recipe is worth revisiting. It embodies the priorities of 1950s America: practicality, resourcefulness, and nurturing through food. Remembering the meat potato hot dish allows us to reconnect with an era where dinner was more than sustenance, it was tradition, care, and togetherness. The 1950s ham and pineapple bake was a centerpiece of Sunday dinners, and its disappearance illustrates how mid-century tastes shaped and then vanished from American kitchens. This dish combined the savory richness of ham with the bright sweetness of canned pineapple, creating a flavor contrast that families adored. It was visually appealing, economical, and celebratory without requiring extravagant ingredients. For decades, it held a place of honor on dining tables, yet few households continue to prepare it today. Betty Crocker included this recipe because it reflected the era's culinary values: simple, reliable, and impressive enough for guests. The preparation was straightforward. Slices of fully cooked ham were arranged in a baking dish, pineapple rings were placed on top, and often a brown sugar glaze or a hint of mustard was brushed over to enhance flavor. Everything baked together until the edges caramelized, releasing a fragrant aroma that filled the home. The dish required no complicated steps, yet it delivered both elegance and comfort. In many families, the ham and pineapple bake represented more than a meal. It marked tradition, the end of the week, and moments when relatives gathered around the table. Its sweet and savory combination became a symbol of care and celebration, linking generations through taste and ritual. The decline of this recipe came gradually. Changing trends in American cuisine, the rise of fresh produce, and evolving holiday menus made such canned classics seem dated. What was once a family favorite became an artifact of nostalgia. Yet revisiting it allows modern cooks to connect with the 1950s kitchen mindset: balance, creativity, and making simple ingredients feel special. The ham and pineapple bake reminds us that food was more than sustenance, it was a statement of love, attention, and shared experience. It is a dish that deserves recognition and appreciation, even decades later. The chicken almondine of the 1950s was a dish that combined elegance and simplicity, yet it quietly disappeared from American kitchens. This recipe was a staple for families seeking a dinner that felt special without demanding expensive ingredients or complicated techniques. Betty Crocker promoted it as a refined yet accessible option, bridging the gap between everyday meals and celebratory occasions. The preparation was straightforward but precise. Tender chicken pieces were lightly sautéed and then finished with a delicate almond topping. Butter, lemon juice, and a hint of parsley added brightness, while toasted almonds created a subtle crunch. The result was a dish that was both visually appealing and satisfying to the palate, capturing the mid-century desire for meals that looked elegant but could be prepared in a standard kitchen. For households in the 1950s, chicken almondines symbolized sophistication and care. Families served it on Sunday dinners, special occasions, or when hosting guests. The combination of buttery almonds and tender chicken represented thoughtfulness, culinary skill, and the pride of creating something memorable with limited resources. It was a dish that made the home feel warm, inviting, and complete. The decline of chicken almondine coincided with changing American tastes. As convenience foods and fast cooking meals became more common, dishes that required attention and careful preparation fell out of favor. The recipe, once celebrated, faded from menus and memory, surviving only in vintage cookbooks. Rediscovering this dish allows modern cooks to reconnect with the 1950s kitchen philosophy: elegance achieved through simplicity, flavor crafted with care, and meals that brought families together. Chicken almondine reminds us that even in a fast-paced world, food can be both comforting and refined. Its quiet disappearance is a reminder of how much has been lost from mid-century American dining, and why some flavors deserve revival. The retro beef ring mold of the 1950s was a striking centerpiece that once amazed American families, yet it has almost completely vanished from memory. This dish was unusual in appearance, but it fulfilled the era's desire for meals that impressed guests while remaining practical and economical. Betty Crocker promoted it as a creative way to transform ordinary ground beef into something visually exciting and structured, demonstrating that home cooks could combine functionality and flair in one dish. The preparation involved shaping seasoned ground beef into a ring mold, often with a cavity in the center filled with vegetables, eggs, or a gelatin-based salad. The beef baked until fully cooked, forming a firm outer structure while holding the filling neatly inside. The combination of textures and the unexpected presentation made it a conversation starter on dining tables across the country. Cooks appreciated its simplicity, and families enjoyed the sense of novelty it brought to otherwise routine dinners. For children and adults in the 1950s, the beef ring mold represented more than a meal. It symbolized ingenuity and pride in the kitchen, where everyday ingredients could become something extraordinary. The dish turned ordinary weeknight dinners into small events, and its presence on the table suggested effort, creativity, and hospitality. Its decline came with shifts in culinary trends. As convenience foods gained popularity and dinner presentations became less formal, the beef ring mold appeared outdated and complex. Home cooks moved toward simpler, faster meals, and this visually striking creation faded from family traditions. Rediscovering the retro beef ring mold allows modern audiences to appreciate a unique aspect of 1950s American dining: a willingness to experiment, a commitment to presentation, and a belief that even modest ingredients could become memorable. It serves as a reminder of how creativity and care once shaped the American dinner table. The cream-chipped beef toast of the 1950s was a reliable, inexpensive meal that fed families across America, yet it has largely vanished from modern kitchens. This dish was simple, hearty, and practical, reflecting the priorities of a post-war nation still mindful of budgets and efficiency. Betty Crocker included it in her cookbooks as a solution for mothers seeking an affordable, filling dinner that required minimal ingredients and time. The recipe combined finely sliced dried beef with a creamy white sauce, usually made from butter, flour, and milk. The mixture was poured over toasted bread, creating a dish that was both satisfying and economical. A sprinkle of pepper or a dash of nutmeg could elevate the flavor, but the base remained remarkably simple. For households in the 1950s, it was a dependable meal that could stretch ingredients and still satisfy hungry family members. Children often regarded it as comforting, while parents appreciated its quick preparation. The aroma of the creamy sauce warming on the stove signaled a predictable and satisfying dinner. In many ways, cream-chipped beef toast represented the ingenuity of mid-century home cooking, turning modest, inexpensive ingredients into a meal that nourished both body and home life. The dish declined in popularity as convenience foods, frozen meals, and fast cooking recipes took over. Its slow, deliberate preparation and unconventional appearance made it seem outdated. Families gradually replaced it with options that were quicker, simpler, and visually more appealing. Remembering cream-chipped beef toast allows modern cooks to appreciate a dish built on practicality, care, and consistency. It reflects a time when families valued resourcefulness and tradition in the kitchen. Rediscovering it provides insight into the meals that once formed the backbone of American home cooking and highlights flavors that deserve revival today. The savory onion pie of the 1950s was a dish that delighted mid-century American families, yet it has nearly disappeared from memory. This recipe combines simple ingredients to create a comforting, flavorful meal that could be served for lunch or dinner. Betty Crocker promoted it as an accessible yet satisfying option, allowing home cooks to present something impressive without relying on expensive or complicated ingredients. The pie typically featured a buttery crust filled with a mixture of caramelized onions, eggs, and cream, sometimes accented with cheese or herbs. The result was a delicate balance of richness and subtle sweetness, with a tender crust that framed the flavorful filling. It baked to a golden perfection, offering both visual appeal and satisfying taste. The savory onion pie exemplified the 1950s approach to home cooking, thoughtful, practical, and focused on flavor, even with modest components. Families of the era associated this dish with care and tradition. It represented a home cooked with attention, where simple ingredients became more than the sum of their parts. Children and adults alike remembered the aroma of onions slowly softening on the stove, signaling a meal that was both nourishing and comforting. The decline of the savory onion pie coincided with shifting culinary preferences. As convenience foods, frozen dinners, and faster meal options rose in popularity, dishes that required patience and skill gradually faded. The pie, once a staple, became overlooked in favor of simpler, quicker alternatives. Rediscovering this dish provides a window into 1950s American kitchens, revealing how home cooks combined practicality, flavor, and presentation. The savory onion pie reminds modern audiences that meals can be both humble and memorable, and that flavors of the past deserve appreciation and revival. It is a culinary tradition waiting to be remembered. The old-fashioned salmon loaf of the 1950s was a dish that dominated post-war dinner tables, yet it has almost entirely vanished from modern kitchens. This recipe was practical, affordable, and surprisingly versatile, offering a protein-rich meal that families could prepare quickly without sacrificing flavor. Betty Crocker included it in her cookbooks as a dependable option for weekday dinners and special occasions alike. The preparation involved mixing canned salmon with breadcrumbs, eggs, and a few seasonings, sometimes including finely chopped vegetables or onions. The mixture was molded into a loaf and baked until firm, often served with a simple dressing or tomato-based sauce. Its appeal lay in its simplicity and adaptability. Families could stretch a single can of salmon into multiple servings, and leftovers were easily repurposed for sandwiches or salads. The salmon loaf was practical, economical, and satisfying, a true reflection of post-war priorities. For households of the era, this dish represented resourcefulness and care. Children and adults associated it with home, family, and consistency. The aroma of the loaf baking in the oven created anticipation and comfort, signaling a complete and nourishing meal. It was not extravagant, but it fulfilled its purpose with reliability and flavor. The decline of the salmon loaf coincided with the rise of convenience foods, frozen dinners, and a cultural shift toward lighter or more novel meals. Its understated appearance and reliance on canned fish contributed to its gradual disappearance. Once celebrated, it slowly slipped from dinner tables and memory. Rediscovering the old-fashioned salmon loaf allows modern cooks to understand the ingenuity of 1950s home kitchens. It highlights a time when practicality, flavor, and family-centered cooking converged. This dish is a reminder that meals do not need to be complicated to be meaningful, and flavors of the past deserve recognition. The forgotten pork chop casserole of the 1950s was a reliable solution for busy mothers, yet it has almost completely disappeared from modern kitchens. This dish combined affordability, convenience, and flavor in a single, baked meal, reflecting the priorities of post-war American families. Betty Crocker included it in her cookbooks as a dependable weekday dinner, offering a satisfying way to stretch ingredients without sacrificing taste or presentation. The recipe typically involved layering pork chops with sliced potatoes, a creamy or tomato-based sauce, and sometimes vegetables, all baked together until tender. The casserole could feed an entire family with minimal effort, and leftovers were easy to repurpose for the next day. Its design was practical, straightforward ingredients, minimal preparation, and a finished dish that appeared thoughtful and substantial on the dinner table. Families appreciated its efficiency, and children loved its hearty flavor. For households of the 1950s, this casserole represented more than nourishment. It symbolized care, reliability, and the ability to provide complete meals despite busy schedules or limited resources. The aroma of the casserole baking in the oven often signaled the end of a long day and the promise of comfort, warmth, and togetherness at the dinner table. The decline of the pork chop casserole coincided with the rise of convenience foods, frozen meals, and faster cooking methods. Its reliance on baking and layered preparation made it seem outdated compared to modern shortcuts. As tastes shifted, the dish quietly faded from family traditions and cookbooks. Rediscovering this casserole allows modern audiences to appreciate the practicality, creativity, and care that defined 1950s home cooking. It reminds us that meals once held both utility and sentiment, and that flavors from the past can still provide comfort and connection today. Betty Crocker's vintage turkey tetrazzini of the 1950s was a creative way to transform leftover poultry into a comforting, elegant meal, yet it has almost completely vanished from modern kitchens. This dish reflected the ingenuity of home cooks in a post-war era, turning modest leftovers into a dish that felt celebratory and satisfying. It was practical, affordable, and visually impressive, demonstrating how families could balance resourcefulness with flavor and presentation. The preparation involved shredding cooked turkey and combining it with buttered noodles, a creamy sauce, and often mushrooms or peas. The mixture was placed in a baking dish, topped with breadcrumbs or cheese, and baked until golden and bubbly. Its appeal lay in its ability to transform ordinary ingredients into something both comforting and refined. Families could easily stretch leftover turkey into multiple servings, making it a favorite during the week following holiday meals or Sunday dinners. For households in the 1950s, turkey tetrazzini represented creativity, care, and efficiency in the kitchen. Children and adults alike associated it with warmth, family gatherings, and the satisfaction of a meal that was thoughtfully prepared. Its aroma signaled nourishment, comfort, and continuity, linking everyday cooking with special occasions. The decline of this dish occurred as convenience foods, frozen meals, and new culinary trends became more popular. Its reliance on leftover ingredients and slow baking made it seem outdated, and it quietly disappeared from home kitchens and family traditions. Rediscovering turkey tetrazzini allows modern cooks to appreciate the resourcefulness and inventiveness of 1950s American kitchens. It reminds us that meals once carried both practicality and sentiment, and that flavors of the past still hold value. This dish serves as a testament to creativity in home cooking and deserves recognition for its ingenuity and comforting appeal.